Hey Steve, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Great, great. Um, I am enjoying this day so much, and thank you for staying here with us all. I think you've been here most of the day.
Yeah, lots of good stories.
Awesome. Well, yours is a good story too. I've just become familiar with it. I heard your interview, and I'm just going to read your bio here. But at a young age, Steve Noak was struck by a motor vehicle, which resulted in an NDE where he met a being comprised solely of light who revealed his connection with the quantum field. Later in his life, the being returned to guide him on his path as a quantum healer, and your tagline is quantum healing with the Trinity, which I'm sure you're going to return to. But thank you so much for being here. And my first question for you is, I heard in the interview that you didn't remember everything about what happened to you when you were 4, when that happened. How did that return to you, all that knowing? So if you want to tell us about how you were struck by a car and then how it returned, I'd love to hear.
Sure. Well, to start off,
And
I was
also,
riding a
who were
big.
you before this happens?
Well, he
Well,
was 4.
I was a pretty obnoxious 3-year old. I changed a lot around like age 5. So I was riding my big wheel, and my brother called out to me from across the street, and he asked me to come over. We're going to the mall. He goes, come across the street, and a car turned down a woman who was drinking, and I just flew down the driveway. Instinctively, I heard mall. Here comes this woman, and she hits me. I go underneath the car. I'm dragged to the end of the road, basically. Um, Numerous injuries, and you know, my mom. My parents were intoxicated a lot. My father worked a lot, so they weren't really you know, forthcoming with everything that had happened, whether they could remember or not during that, but it was broken shoulder blade, broken ribs, collapsed lung. There's a few other things. The neighbors told me my heart stopped and they had to restart it again. So what I remember is a blur. I'm just going down the driveway. Next thing I know is I'm looking at myself, and I'm above me and I'm underneath the car, but I have no clothes on, which was kind of strange. But I'm just looking at myself. I see my eyes roll in the back of my head, and everything fades to like black, like you're done watching a movie. And then it opens up again, and I'm sitting on someone, and I'm leaning to the side. And immediately, when I come to, my head's down, I'm kind of hunched over on this, what I think is a person. So I open my eyes, and actually, initially I'm thinking, who is this? That was my first thought. Who is this? So I open my eyes and I catch like the bottom of hair and a robe, and the hair is so long it's almost touching the ground, and it's like silvery white. So I'm like, yeah, who is this? And I turn to see who this is. And instead of seeing a person, I see a hooded figure with no face, just light. They say, Steven, put your head down. Everything's going to be all right. So I put my head down, and I'm staring still at this face. And I remember having a few thoughts at the time, that we weren't moving our lips, um, still trying to understand where I was. So the more I'm just kind of staring at this being's face and enjoying it, I'm being pulled into basically whatever light was there. And I start to see what I would think to be an interpretation of heaven. I can't say what heaven is for everybody, but I see this scene where there's just flowers and nature and elderly and children in the distance, but the flowers, as I was looking at them, their colors were alive. They were their own entities, their own beings, and they were just going through the world along with laughter. It was just flowing through as kind of like a frequency or a waveform, if you will. And at one point, that waveform touched my heart, like the center of my heart. And instantly, I was endowed or downloaded this feeling that everything was one. And I knew it all came from love, and then it filtered down from there. So in essence, I knew that was my identity. So I wanted to go there, but they said it's not your time. I also knew pain, suffering, hate, and things like that couldn't exist there. It wasn't that they could not exist there. They couldn't vibrate at a rate that would allow them to form with the amount of basic pure love that was there. And later that came in handy when I figured out, you know, I tucked that away. I was normal for a while, but I had to unpack my darkness, my addictions and all that. And that came in really handy to remember I already was that love that I visited. And that was a big part of that. So they tell me, basically put your head down, everything's going to be fine. I want to go there. They say it's not your time. And it was like somebody just moved the scene out of the way, and I was in a different place, and it had blue lines going up and down and across and everywhere. And I was told this is the quantum field, and human beings build their reality in conjunction with this field, with their thoughts and their heart. And they showed me as an energy in the center of what I would say could be like a wagon wheel, if you will. And they showed thoughts going to my heart, extending out to this outer rim that was around me on this wheel somewhat, or screen that was all around me. And these thoughts and feelings had data or memories at the end of them. So this cord that went from my heart into this outer screen was all memories, all data. And they were sure to tell me that, this is all data. And then after that, I saw, which would come in later when they returned to teach me. I also saw a triangle, and they told me this triangle is the Trinity. And on each tip, it had an energy point. And I was told this is Divine Father, Divine Mother, and a Divine Son. You'll make these three one. So bringing them into presence would help me return basically to that divine state I figured out later in my journey. But I had to, again, have the experience, see that along with the Trinity, which I was told to make these three one, and that by bringing these three into presence, bringing Divine Father, Divine Mother together, that this would start a process that would kind of release me from a lot of the trouble I was in. Naturally, you don't understand that at 4. I was also shown the divine blueprint. They said every person has the ability to restore and redeem themselves. It's in their divine blueprint. It's in identifying themselves, not what the world gives them, unsubscribing to that identity, in other words, and subscribing solely to the image of creator they were made in, and to begin form a relationship with this divine image and build this within ourselves, rather than be giving away our power to the world. So they showed me divine blueprint, as simple as people need to believe they are this instead of believing what the world tells them they are. And this would fix a lot of their nervous system. They explain the nervous system gets rewired around trauma, around cellular memory, and that cellular memory runs subconscious programs. And what becomes cellular memory is things we experience, things we believe. Those things are being downloaded into the body. So I have the experience at 4. I see those things. I can't express or absorb or understand what I saw. I knew something had happened. I was like, the more I would think about it, I would get filled with emotion, different feelings. I'm like, something happened. And then sure enough, around the age 10, when the memories returned, that's when I was like, yup, holy crap, something did happen. But at that time, I'm like, I'm only getting a piece of it, and then another piece, and then another piece. So I'm like, what do I do with it? I kept it to myself. I hid it um, for many years, probably 25 years, where I had, little things happen there and there, here and there, nothing major. Um, but around 10 was when the memories started to return of what I experienced, sitting with this being, speaking with them. Didn't know why, didn't know what it was about, just had the memory there. And as I got older, it became more and more solid. It became stronger and stronger. And the only way I can explain that is if you were to ask somebody, what'd you have for lunch last week on a Wednesday? And they can't remember. Now, all of my other memories will fade with time. Well, this one was concrete. I knew, I had a knowing of what happened. So I live a pretty normal life. I tuck that away. I don't talk about it. I was never raised religious, never brought to church. So go through the addictions, the darkness, the abandonments, and all those things where you're seeking this filling from the world, and it's a cycle. It's just an empty circuit, is what I call it now. It's an empty circuit. It's not going to return my energy to me. So I had to go through all that where you're finding yourself in the world. You're still seeking validation and need approval for others. At the time, I'm a GameStop store manager. Well, actually, I'll back up to the accident. I have another car accident, quite a few car accidents, mind you. Played sports. At this point in my 20s, 30s, I was riddled with pain, physical pain. It just overtook me, and I was miserable. So the car accident, I flipped a car over 5 times, doing 75, 80 miles an hour. 2 of the people fly out of the car. Luckily, they landed on the grass and survived, and somehow everybody got up and walked away. But during that time, I left, and it was like someone else was there. Put it that way, driving. And that enabled me to notice other patterns of when I was younger, when I fell out of, I don't know, 50-foot high tree, and the only thing down there was a cement patio, and you hit every single branch on the way down, but you catch the last one. How is that humanly possible? And then just other occurrences. So I put these patterns together where I was leaving and some other force was coming in. So this started to expand my awareness. And then shortly after this accident, I was having surgery on my elbow that I cracked in the accident, flipping the car over. And I'm getting really panicked. Really don't even want to be there. I don't like hospitals. So I go to get up and effectively leave, and this energy just sits me back down. And it was like the warmest, kindest love you could ever think of in the world. It was like grandma's cookies times a million. And then this energy just started at my feet and went all the way up around my body, like I was being encapsulated in a tomb or something of light or love. And the voice said to me, this voice said, Stephen, put your head down. Everything's going to be fine. And that was it. That was reality as I knew it. Changed forever there when I realized, holy crap, that was real. It really happened. And these 2 points, the present moment and that met, and it was a flood of visions, of energies, supernatural experiences. At the time, like I said, I was a normal, just store manager at a retail store. After that, I tried to go back to work. I went back to work. I started hearing people's thoughts. I started feeling feelings just race through me, and I would bust out laughing or I would bust out crying, and I didn't understand what was going on. I had a woman fall down outside my store in the front, and she fell on the cement. She was elderly. She was in pain. And for some reason, I put my hand on her because I was the first one to get to her. And she was just in pain, just groaning. And she looked at me and she said, "I'm all warm and I have no pain." And EMTs come and I wait and I go back to my workstation. I'm like, that was weird. And just thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it, amongst the other things of hearing people's thoughts, being able to feel their hunger. And that was a fun one to figure out. Obviously, if I just ate and these people are walking by, there's some sort of transmission going on. But anyway, so,
How did
you
you
know,
make sense of that? Because that's a big change, and it seems like
I,
it just kinda came all at once for you.
I tried to go to every church I could find because I knew it had something to do with God. I instantly knew that there was a spiritual war of some kind for our hearts. And the hows, the whys, the whats, these people should know it. They're the experts. So I go to every denomination I could find and, little answers. As far as how to function, I had to leave my job. My family thought I was crazy because all of a sudden I'm talking about quantum stuff and these things I experienced and God, and now I'm reading about God. And it was an extreme change from somebody who was unhappy to somebody who just had this energy dropped in them, wound up like a toy, and then go,
I
towards creator.
I get that. There's a joy in being attached to that. It's also overwhelming, like,
Mm.
there's a lot to figure out
I
without.
thought I was crazy. And, balls of light in my room. And I'm waking up and is that a freaking ball of light in my room? And I'm looking around to see what else it could be. No, it's a ball of light in my room. And then, in between, you would go to these points of light and then you would go to these points of questioning yourself and density, points of light, density. And I realized that's the whole experience. I'm supposed to learn how to move between these at will. So one day I'm driving, I'm beating myself up, being really hard on myself for all the things I didn't accomplish in life, et cetera, that I wanted to. And this voice comes in. No, well, let me back up. So back to the symptoms. I'm awakening, right? Having a hard time at work, things like that. Then all of a sudden, I start noticing silhouettes around me, all around me, different colors, smoky, dark, moving everywhere. And then they start communicating with me. And about 90% of them were not nice. And I figured out through the things that were being said as far as inner speak. And it got so bad when I would lay down to bed, the side of my head would be spasming. That's how bad it was. And as soon as I would try to go into that other brainwave state, here comes all this stuff. So at first I thought, well, you're haunted, So then I tried some experiments, put some things down, challenge them, whatever it may be. And then I realized and got the download and the knowing that this wasn't happening to me, it was happening through me, that I was projecting this out as distortions of light, being this prism of light that was allowing it into my body. It was getting distorted. So I had to figure out, I knew in that instant, I had to figure out how to tune myself, how to adjust that light, how to remove the lower data, the lower cellular memory, the lower embodiments that weren't me, because suddenly I had this intense craving for truth.
Can you
And
break that down a little bit more for me? Because, one of the things I have done is certainly remove ghosts from places, that haunt certain areas. But there are people who've come to me and I feel like entities are attached to them. And, there's a removal of that. So could you break down? And then I have seen when people are under the influence of drugs and alcohol, spirits kind of move through them.
mhm.
Like, and I've visually seen this. So could you break down some of your knowing and how people can work with this?
Well, I would say some are entities, many are of our own creation. So as far as how to work on that, you're going to want to be speaking to it directly, to your body, to be claiming your identity, and to first and foremost be putting out markers in your nervous system, in your cellular memory. You want to be the programmer, mind you. You want to be putting markers in there. I'm a sovereign being. I am already love. I'm already whole. I'm already validated. So that this way, these markers are clear in your system when you have things come into them. It's going to be there for you to go to basically use it as a mirror to discern this other energy. So I had to learn early on to command, speak these programs out with thankfulness and gratitude. And a lot of times saying thank you to your wounds. Thank you for what you've taught me, but I no longer identify with you. I ask you to go into the heart space. That's putting the light on the part of ourselves that never got recognition, that kind of needs to just move through the system. Just data, move through the system. Thank you. I no longer identify with you, but I also want to control my inputs and my outputs. What do I allow into my system? What do I project out? Even in my own thoughts, because just correcting that is going to allow me to build that higher self into being. But yeah, I don't want to go too far off.
No, I love this. There's nothing to fear. That's what I found. So like a lot of people told me to do John of God's protocol. I did it, but I felt like the spirit wasn't right. I talked to it and I said, in the name of God, in the name of Jesus, be gone. And then a few months later, he was caught for human trafficking. I believe that spirits won't lie to us if we talk to them. So whether it's a part of us or a part of someone else or a fragment that's left behind, we can discern.
What I'm doing is I'm attaching my thought to my heart, which is already attached to this thing, and then I'm attaching it to the Christ. So I'm bringing it always, every lower feeling, lower emotion, even if it's physical pain. And this is where it got good when I started to figure out if I could remember that one energy that I was, where pain couldn't exist, and get back to that feeling within me, that makes them both one. Then I'll experience heaven on earth. So now, after going from being on opioids, overdoses, just thinking I'd always be that to function, now I take nothing. I rely solely on my mind and my heart. But it was a correction of also how data is being stored. I want to physically command my body to send everything through the heart with thankfulness and gladness before it goes down, stores in my body, starts to create lower personalities and identities, presents later. That's the old system. The new system is we're creating a new world by rewiring how we store and present embodiment in the terms of data through the heart. So you want everything to go there first, your physical pain, your lower emotions, and breathing, divine mother, thought, divine father, and they have a son together. They're creating a singularity, a black hole, if you will. Since we were talking about black holes earlier, we have the ability to create a singularity within us, a quantum transformer in our chest, a Tesla coil plasma coil going from our third eye down. And this is like a frequency oscillator. Whatever data I feed it, whatever thoughts, it's going to create the embodiment for my desired experience. So that's why I want to make sure my thoughts are always on point. Not only that I'm recognizing if I am the energy of love, just having a human experience, that I'm not the feeling of fear, worry, stress, anxiety. I'm the one feeling them. So thank you for what you've taught me, but I don't identify with you. So you're kind of managing where data is going, where this is going in your system, because it's going to present later in one way or another. And we see it in what you believe becomes truth, whether it's unworthy or worthy, it's going to download and become you. So that's why you want to be the programmer.
Cool. And so all this seems to be downloaded to you. Have you studied since then any healing modalities or so I'm curious, just tell me about your healing journey, because it sounds like you're gifted with some healing.
Sure. I started by studying Reiki just because it was the first thing that came to me that kind of made me feel like, oh, okay, this is kind of what's happening to me. Because at first it was just people coming to me randomly, and I wanted to study. I really wanted to learn what was going on with myself. And that grew into figuring out that it was 0 point healing, where we are in a system of duality, where we're pushed and pulled by our environment, a lot of us. What I wanted to do is I wanted to break that circuit. And the Trinity helped me do that. It helped me make the two energies, positive and negative, one. So I was no longer at war with myself. Because a lot of the things I went through in my life early on, I finally got to a point where I was like, I'm ready to be accountable. I surrender everything to you, remake me. And I was in tears, kneeling down at the cross, being like, show me if this is a past life, what's happening to me? Because it was just this thirst for God along with this quantum stuff. And I'm like, where is this coming from? And that's when I had my first past life vision of walking on a road in sandals. And there were two rivers on one side of me, one river on the other side. And they came together in front of me into one, and it ended. I'm like, well, thanks God, that was great. So no idea what it meant. I looked it up, and it was the parting of the Red Sea. Now, who I was, don't know. It's not important, but just the fact that I had no idea what it was, that I was able to confirm that information. And that, as well as with the beings that showed up in my room that were talking about evolution, Ascension, and things like that. I had no idea what they were talking about until I looked it up and slowly was able to figure out they were guiding me to use the things I not only understand what I saw in my NDE, but to heal myself and then show others how to do it. By, get this, we're in the system of alternating current right now, AC, and we're rewiring our system into a direct current so that we can sort of break out of the matrix, because we're in this quantum experience, just energy playing human characters for a while. And a lot of us forgot who we were because we overspent in a way and became so linear, we forgot. And now we're remembering, reconnecting ourselves, recircuiting, coming back online, if you will.
Can you talk to that a little bit more? I will describe my understanding of this. Like, time isn't a concept on the other side during the near-death experience. And so part of healing for me is collapsing time and really focusing on the purity of the self, like you said, that was pure, that didn't feel the pain, that can be overlaid over the system. And also deprogramming. A lot of what I do is theta healing, but I kind of make it my own. So it's removing things at different levels. Could you speak more to that total change?
I would say the total change was a realization that I had made a quantum leap, and I was my future self guiding my past self in the present moment. That I no longer had fear or worry over the past, shame or guilt over the past, or fear or worry over the future. And that way I was able to be fully present with all of my energy. I learned how to call my multidimensional energy into the moment of now. And basically just translate that over into, we'll say, more potent energy. I was really looking to get as potent of a charge as I could without getting it popped by my own thoughts, opinions of others, whatever it may be. Again, correcting the inputs, outputs, building charge, and then I choose when and where to spend that. Once you become that love again, and you realize that was my identity all along, then I'm free to experience it without conditions anywhere. So I don't know if I answered that question, but
Yeah, you did. And what is the experience of going through life for you now? Like, how is it now after this download? Are you
I'd say after all the soul work, the shadow work, the alchemy, the transmutation of the lower self, it's beautiful. It's like there was another world there that I couldn't see that opened up after I made it into that space, and I could sustain it. That's the thing, it's sustaining it. I had to learn how to feed my spirit other things than I was doing. And it was strange because these changes came on naturally. It was around the time of Lent, and I couldn't eat. I was fasting, and I had no idea until the second year when I realized again I'm fasting, for some reason I couldn't eat and it was Lent. So I'm getting slowly guided through these processes, as well as like all of a sudden out of nowhere, I just got an interest in taking really hot salt baths and then going outside in the cold. It was like dead of winter. No, I learned to follow. So I just did it. And slowly it helped me heal myself, but get to a basic maintenance. And I look at myself like a vehicle, maintaining the data in my vehicle. But I would say a typical day is healing clients, but self-maintenance on my system. I'll wake up, I'll call the energy down through my crown, ask it to connect to my heart and expand. And then I will input some commands in my system, like I am all of creation. Thank you for allowing me to have another day. Thank you for the trees. Thank you for the birds. And what I'm doing is I'm circuiting. And I'm aware that everything I come into contact with, I have a choice to create a circuit or a little reality, if you will. So what I'm doing is I'm circuiting with the heart of the universe. And my honesty is important there. So if I'm honestly thankful, that will multiply faster because the charge is authentic, it's full, as opposed to not being. So for me, it's I'm in a beautiful space, like total bliss, full of love, where like I wish everybody could feel it. How much it's like, being in love, um, or having love for, I don't even want to say family, because there really is no description for it. Let's say animal. Okay, a lot of us have felt that pure love between an animal. It's like that times 1,000, where I'm full with it and I can breathe, couple breaths up, couple words down, and I can feel a charge meet in the center and just expand through my system. And I can take back my nervous system pretty quick. Now, if I'm skipping my programming, my maintenance, it's easier to get me frustrated, easier to push me out of my center because I'm not placing markers. I'm not the one putting the foundation.
Yeah, I understand that. And it takes a lot more continual practice, meditation and centering oneself. I think what I always tell people, and maybe you agree with this, like if you go through something traumatic, which we all do, sometimes meditation and this healing work is just getting us back to center. And then, we can
Mhm.
work on the healing. So sometimes we're out of balance coming back into center. But when you're at the center, that's when all the spiritual downloads, all the healings, all the connections can happen. And so really you're just programming yourself to be open to life and healing, which is
Yeah, and with the new activations, it doesn't have to be such a long trip into density, where we're creating, learning from contrast, and then returning. It can be more intuitive, where it's fed through the heart first before it becomes embodied and creates a subconscious program. Then I learn from it. No, that's the old system.
do you work with angels and guides too? Or
Hmm.
yeah, so I'd love to hear about that.
What do you want to hear? They wouldn't leave me alone.
Yeah, let's hear it all.
Well, it started with, let's see, the synchronicities, where I would just hear things being pulled out of either the radio, the TV, sitting on a park bench and having a flyer fly by, stop in front of you and having it be an advertisement for something to do with an angel. Just it started that way. Um, and then slowly learning that the seven archangels, the seven demonic princes, were within us, running through us as like a positive and negative, and one couldn't exist without the other, that would fly away into a bunch of atoms or molecules, but that they were embodiments, um, as well. And sort of you hit a certain frequency, certain type of charge, and you're able to sustain it, then you can embody those archetypes or those principles, but that everybody has them. Like it's within everybody to make contact, to work with. And the same thing with the Trinity, it's not religious, it's a positive, negative alchemy, so for me, the angels just kept showing up and showing up. And then the first one was the angel of death, ironically. But it was pretty funny with the synchronicities and just communications at the time. A lot of times it'll be things just said. Angel of Death, Michael, all the different ones. But they're all different aspects of us, I believe, as well. You know, if everything is one. And to me, it is. And I never lose sight of that so that I understand that I'm having a love story with all of creation. No matter how it's looking, I want it to look, clean. So, angels, yeah, they're, for me, I came to understand that they were the high density beings that we refer to as aliens. That's what they became for me when they began showing up in my room and seeing the balls of light and the energies and the things they were speaking to me about the Trinity and love and ascension and guiding me to Christ, and to understand that if I was the body of the Christ, then I was to embody that energy. So that became my pursuit. But they became interdimensional high density beings to me that are especially now working with mankind and revealing, a lot of the things that I was telling, say, family at the time that these beings returned to me. They thought I was crazy, wound up coming true about the world, about whether it was food or, my, I don't know if I want to say, anyway, somebody being pregnant, whatever it was. I realized looking back, that was coming from my future self, but I had to integrate all three into one.
So how much do you know about your future self? I know this sounds strange, but I
Mhm.
kind of know the end point, my exit point. I know my higher self too, and she does inform me, and so there's a calmness and a knowing about that. Like there's do you know your
I
final?
know what I want to finish is already finished. All
Yeah.
I need to do is embody the energy of love, embody the Christ, and be calibrated correctly, and then I'll hit that trajectory. Now, if I'm holding other charges in, trauma, judgments on the world, other energies, guess what? My trajectory is going to be off for that timeline. So yeah, it's already finished through the Christ. So for me, the rest is just gravy. It's just play. I see energy experiencing itself, deconstructing, reconstructing matter, but learning from contrast on a collective level, just as we are through us. I believe from the beginning of time, even when God said, "I'm not going to flood the world again," that proves right there he was also growing. She also growing and learning, just like we are, and it's growing and learning through us.
Do you resonate with certain archetypes? Though I know you said, we're all one, but like I feel drawn to certain archetypes like the eternal child, the wounded healer, these are the.
I would say I used to resonate with the wounded healer, but that was before I kind of got out of that cycle. It was all about releasing the cellular memory in me. Then I would have no resonance when it appears in the outside world. It was definitely big time wounded healer, um, where I had to sacrifice myself for everybody, and I was always supposed to get the scraps. Like even if nobody was around, there was a program where I would only allow myself the least of things, and I had the most unworthiness, and that's really what brings me into the other understanding that anybody can do this, because I was unworthy. I felt like I was unlovable. I felt like I was all these things. And I know for a fact, just because I got bumped by a car doesn't make me special. This stuff is for everybody there to redeem themselves through that heart opening, really. But for me, I couldn't open my heart again to the world, to people. Wouldn't do it. I was bitter. Would not open my heart again to people. It had to be something above people. And then that's when that happened. Now, by the end of these beings returning, showing up in my room, talking about ascension, balls of light, me sitting in the lawn chair outside and getting lifted out of my body, all of a sudden, all my pain is gone. I couldn't even feel the lawn chair, couldn't even feel the pressure of it. And then they're saying they're this angelic race, but that they were also a lot like machines, and they were teaching me about the human design, ascension, quantum generator, frequency oscillator, all that stuff, as I'm going through that, I'm losing family. I'm losing touch with the people that I cared about, that I loved. They were judging me, wanting me to see a shrink. They had no idea that I didn't sleep for 2 weeks because I didn't know what was happening. Um, I had moments where I left work and I went to a gas station and I'm standing in line and I see this kid get out of line and he grabs a candy bar and he turns and he asks, says, Dad, about halfway through, can I have this? Yeah, sure, whatever. He gets back in line. Then he does it again, only it wasn't any different. It was the same. He had one candy bar, nothing changed. And I was like, that was really odd. I walked out to my car. I get in the car. They're talking to a woman. I start the car. It's on the radio. She's winning a radio contest. Oh, yeah, yeah. They're talking. All of a sudden, the phone's ringing on the radio, and it's the woman. And they ask her the question, but I just heard the answer. So I was having these time distortions as well. So through that, man, it was like I was at the end of my rope. And I think you have to be in order to be willing and just, I'm like ready for the sacrifice, dude. Whatever I got going on here is not better than whatever I could be doing. So for me, it was sharing what I had inside me, or it was going to make me unwell to hold all that in.
And we have a couple of questions from listeners, but I have so many. And first, though, like I look at the wounded healer now as someone who isn't afraid to share the journey, to be authentic and honest, because there's so many spiritual teachers who try to outdo one another or come, from this place of, you know, uh, just spiritual abuse, really. And I think we're all human, we're all learning. And,
Mhm.
it's good to break down the ego and show the process of how we learn. Um, some people are a little confused. I think I understand it, but the question is, Stephen, could you please help me understand why we would choose demons to live in us for balance? I'm referring to your statement about the seven
Oh, we're
archangels.
not choosing demons. They're just, we're
Well,
seeing them as demons.
yeah.
We're the ones giving it definition. We're the ones giving them power by the actions we choose. If we correct our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions, then they have no power, right? So it's just giving us power as creators in two different mediums.
Yeah, and maybe it's even a bowing to the shadow side of ourselves that collapses it. Like
Mhm.
sometimes I look at the darker parts of myself and I comfort it in order for it to collapse and not because you
Right.
don't
I'm the one in control of it. If I
yeah,
deny it, it exists. If I deny it exists within me, then guess what? I'm not in control.
right.
If
And
I
that's
think it's outside of me.
right. And that's why you see people. And if you see people driven by unconscious desires, it's coming next for them. And you want to tell them, hey, watch out, watch out.
Hmm.
Like, but you have to kind of bow to that part of you in order to make peace with it and not lead with it.
Part of my journey was going out, and this was that journey of exploration, trying to find every book I could on archangels, demons, and binding them all together as one. And this brought me back to that oneness because ultimately it was for accountability. It's like I bring them all together as one. I'm accountable for everything I ever created, any hurt I ever gave, and any multidimensional self on any timeline ever. I want it now in this lifetime. And that started my journey of purification. And
And
just understanding, overcoming this. Now, okay, I overcome that. Then what else are you going to do to me? There's nothing you can do to me now that I've overcome this negative aspect of myself that I once thought was separate. And, whether it be religion telling me this is outside of me or the devil's on the outside, but heaven's within. No, man.
so I know you get this question, and all near-death experiencers do, but since you do have some future premonitions, what do you say to people who are overwhelmed by chaos in the world and pain in the world?
I always advise them to speak to their nervous system, their identity, because that divine law is written on their DNA. And by sending signals into their system that I'm already loved, that I'm already this, it's going to awaken and basically take back those neural pathways that are being kind of overwhelmed at that moment. but I'm really looking to use my mind and my heart together, because throughout our lives, we're taught people are either thinkers or too emotional. No, they work together in balance. And that's the alternating current I was talking about. We want to bring that into a direct current instead of having current alternating. So I always advise them to remind their nervous system of their identity, to speak things into their system that allow them to expand. So that expanded identity, that expanded point of view, when it's fed into your system as truth, with thankfulness, whatever it may be, I'm looking to hit a certain frequency, as well as, say, simply remembering an experience I had while I'm breathing, because now I'm using breath, Divine Mother, with that thought, and it's going to start circulating in my system again. But to detach from the chaos of the world and the things that are going on, we have to identify ourselves as something larger and understand that we are all one energy, playing characters. And the best we can do is change our responses and remove ourselves out of the system so that the propagation of these lower energies doesn't continue. You know, change one frequency, this frequency, that frequency. I see dots that were once connected now losing power, losing resonance, and we're bringing our resonance back into love. Now there's another being coming out to help us create another world. So
Yeah,
it's that expanded point of view that will get you out of that micro focusing.
that's exactly the way I see it, Steve. Like I see like pockets where even one household or one person can create a pocket of love, and that
Mm-hmm.
begin to seep into areas where like the whole world could be on fire and you could still be in a pocket of love, and you'll begin to affect those around you.
Mm-hmm.
That it's always worth creating from that place of love, that it does make a difference no matter
Yeah,
what.
I learned what happens when I don't, you know, the effects and how terrible it was for my body to not be authentic, to continue the patterns, the habits, the impulses. And that really drove me on a train to understand that everything, every fight I ever had was with myself. And I started to direct it at my habits, my patterns, my impulses. Anything that wasn't love within me became interference, became a violation. And I started to learn that I was a sacred star system of creation, you know, and I was going to protect that and clean it so that it can be used. And, you know, with distance healing and things like that, and you're transmitting photons, I want to carry a large punch. So that led me to just move out of the way, Steve. Just calibrate yourself. Use your pain as a compass when you're out of calibration, because you know if you're in the right space, you're not experiencing that physical pain. So I just kind of learned what to absorb, where to put data, what not to create, things like that, as well as the boundaries of allowing people in, but not their lower energy. Like you can come in, do, but that has to stay out there.
Oh, tell people how to do that. That's a good one.
Well, a lot of it comes through the knowing of yourself as having authority over all dimensions in the Christ, embodied as love, and stating it, that continual process of I am sacred, I am sovereign. Because then the more you say that, the easier it will be to feel any pressure, any push, or any wannabe entrance into our system from some falsehood. And that's really what it's also about, aligning your thought with your feeling, with your action. You want everything to be authentic, straight line, because I want to feed the truth into my own system and build the programs. Sorry, go ahead.
So say you had a negative interaction with someone and then you come back, change that simply by aligning and going, I am only going to
Well,
see.
if I attached, it would be breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth. I would breathe like a good 3 times because I'm looking to pull up that energy. And then I would command into my system. I would say, thank you for what you taught me, but you're no longer welcome here. Or I don't identify with you. In other words, I'm not giving you any space to embody with me. I'm not identifying with you, because that's where all our disease and illness comes from, is when we're attaching and identifying with things that are not our identity, that are not love. That's when I'm starting to distort that light. So
Oh, so that, yeah, and using that with just interactions with people, then it's you choosing not to.
yeah, because I'm the one behind the thought. I'm the one using the Xbox controller playing this character. I don't have to hit the button and react. I don't have to answer that first charge that comes up. But if I do attach and go out of character, then it's breath work and understanding that since it's all source, I can go to my source and make amends. I can go to my source and ask for forgiveness and send love. That's why it really helps me knowing that it all was one, all came from one. I was already love. Therefore, I was supposed to be human. We were supposed to be humans.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that's a really healing way to deal with the world and people is to realign. Interesting. So,
And also understanding that I'm actually having a love story with all of creation. And however I interact with each character of source is going to affect my ability to feel that rich experience and to hold that type of consciousness. Now, if I'm going to put other charges in there, full well it's going to interference is going to happen.
so kind of back to your story, how long did it take you to integrate, once all these downloads came back? What was that process like?
Yeah. So when these beings came back, I would say it was probably a good 10 years or so of really just going in deep dark patches and then visiting what I thought was real again, and then my life going to heck again, and it was like back and forth until I slowly learned how to correct it and received more information and guided along the way. Like eventually I would just be pulled somewhere and I'd be like, okay, I guess we're doing this, I guess we're doing that. And the things that I was being guided to was to reconnect with nature, hiking, fishing, like I used to do, and really do a lot of breath work there, and start thanking Mother Earth and seeing myself as one, as the same as the trees, one with all things, and trying to get into that rhythm. So it was about 10 years. The last couple of years, I'd say probably from like 2008 to like 2016. And then it started the healing phase where I was starting to, okay, I've done enough on myself to where I think I can help this person, because I had to overcome all these beings and energies and filter those out and figure out what was what. And that was a lot of my cases at first were like people with entities, and me figuring out this is just some junk that you created. If we eliminate this, that eliminates that. So it's learning how to tune with the mind and the heart and guiding others.
So now on your journey after integrating, um, what can you say to this crowd or anyone who has an illness, or because a lot of times people are overwhelmed by the pain of a particular sickness, or that they are near death in some cases when they listen to near death experiences. So what do you say to those who are struggling deeply with illness?
Well, I would say first and foremost, no matter where you are, what you're doing, you can connect your mind and your heart, and you can move into places you want to visit again within your heart. It's timeless. It doesn't matter whether we have a body or not. We're energy using these bodies to just appear in this material reality and experience certain sensations we couldn't in that other space. So it's such a beautiful, loving space that's so real to me now. It's more real than what I see here. So I know full well uh, we're all going, and that's back to love. But to those struggling with a disease, what I say to you is take the fight to the disease itself. Give it a face, give it a shadow, give it an appearance. Separate your identity from it. Don't speak about it. Don't give it fuel. Don't victimize yourself. oh, this has happened, it's because it's gonna patternize. And you really want to break patterns. You want to start answering things with different signals, different thoughts, different feelings, and just being aware of what I'm witnessing, how I'm handling what I'm going through. Because if I can shift my energy and my state of being with thankfulness, with love, with really any other frequency than what you're experiencing, if you can literally trick your body into believing something because it doesn't have a separate brain. It's not going to argue, hey, this isn't true, if you believe it's true. So act as if it's already accomplished. Speak to the body as if you're already healed. Start giving thanks for what's already done. And the body's going to start going, oh, okay. And it's going to start vibrating and adjusting to that reality and moving you out of that space where you're accumulated more pain in the terms of cellular memory. Think of it like, Holy Spirit, Christ, Divine Mother to me became like bounce in a dryer, where I was tired of the socks sticking to me and that being my pain from all these car accidents and everything else. And whatever else the doctors couldn't figure out, I got so tired of it that, okay, I saw this. Okay, I think I know what they're teaching me. Okay, let's try this, Steve. And now I'm so used to it. If I skip it, I don't like the way it feels. Like I'm in another lower space. I can feel it. So my advice is to understand you're already sovereign, that you're already whole. It's a realization that needs to occur within yourself by feeding that system, that signal and truth. And you want to factualize it, make it non-negotiable. It already is. Even if you need to pretend as you're speaking this into your body, right to the pain, that this has already occurred. You want to speak it really that way, in that way.
I love that. And it's kind of reminiscent of Joe Dispenza too, in some ways, who's like, hey, so what if it takes 4 years of doing this? You're going to suffer anyway. So, like commit to
Mm.
really doing this with your body, commit to this process of healing. And for me, that's been so healing, like to do what you're saying, but to know, look, I could suffer anyway, so I might as well commit to the love and see where the
Right,
breakthrough.
you're on Earth. I mean, let's face it. They sent us where they sent Satan, right? So if I'm going to be here and I'm going to have this love in me, then I'm going to be free. Without this love in me, without loving me, I'm in bondage. And I realized that a lot of these grounds that were holding me down, I needed to release those. And those were the unhealed parts of myself. And yeah, the power of knowing, gnosis, signal to the system that it already is. If you can get to that point of truth, and what I tell clients is, think of a few things you do know for certain. I know how to tie my shoes. I know how to walk a dog. I know how to pour a bowl of cereal. I know I am sovereign. Thank you for already healing me. And you're looking to accumulate charges. And because that truth is a resonance at that knowing. And when you can couple that knowing with your identity, then you become very powerful to heal yourself. The world's going to want to separate the mind, the heart, so we have to keep that marker, is what I call it, as a sovereign being. That's my marker. I don't want to go too far from it. I'll have fun. I'll be a human for a while, but I'll never lose sight of that marker.
Well, I love it, your story and your healing message. And, one thing that I've noticed is that people are leaving religion by the droves. And so people are searching for their own spiritual path. And a lot of times we're judged by people who are religious, but that healing power of Christ is real. And, like that is,
Yeah,
there
he
is,
became the messenger to me that showed me how to do it.
yeah.
And I was like, forget this person and that person. And suddenly I realized, by doing the work and following it, how much and how many things were revealed that weren't following it, put it that way.
Yeah, yeah. That sometimes the very people who, are screaming about religion are the people like Jesus who's preaching kind of against them.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, aren't you already out of love? Haven't you already lost?
Yeah, which kind of leads into our next speaker. I think we do have to switch, but thank you so much, Steve, for your
Hey, thank you
message.
for letting me share.
That
Thank
was
you to
awesome.
everybody who spoke before me. I loved all your stories and can't wait to hear more.